Welcome back, everybody. It's November 12th, 2021, about 2 hours before market open. A lot of instability in the universe right now with the Rivian offering, Elon Musk buying Tesla shares, and all kinds of other things out there. I wanted to step back away from the volatility in Zillow open housing and auto markets and take a look at the Metaverse. Last week, that was the Lizard King came out with his video and talked about how he was going to rebrand Chamath Palihapitiya and some of the other former Facebook leaders call Facebook evil, say they won't use it, they won't let their kids use it. If you're the Lizard King, what are you going to do? You come out with this new rebrand, and there's been a lot of criticism of this on the internet, what it is, what it means. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit and decide what is the Metaverse and how do you invest in the Metaverse. And clearly this is a longer term investment. It's not going to be something quick. So if you look at Facebook is now Meta, there's different spots to see this. What's this one? So what is Metaverse? Why should we care? Next major computing platform? I don't think so. I think it's more how do we interact. It's not how we compute, it's how we interact. Linking digital assets to real world activity in the Metaverse. I don't know, I think that's robotics and automation and the stuff that Kathy Wood has in RQ. Characteristics and challenges. I think the big challenge in the Metaverse is just bandwidth. If you read about the early days of YouTube, like so many startups, you have to have a great idea, but you have to hit it at the right time. There were several startups similar to YouTube that fell on their face because they came out before the internet had enough bandwidth to share video without it just skipping. So I hate to pick on whoever this is, but no, I don't buy any of this. So go to my favorite source, Wikipedia, and on Wikipedia, let me get rid of this one, Metaverse, and they talk about iteration of the internet, supporting 3D virtual environment, elements, virtual economies, potential implementations, human geography, technology, and how it's going to work. I mean, if you think about the idea of, and you can go out on Wikipedia and put in augmented reality, put in virtual reality, this is virtual reality, and right now you can go out on different platforms and get into a virtual reality environment with very realistic looking stuff. I think what the Metaverse is it's augmented reality pulling our real world around us into a virtual type environment. Think if you're going into a Zoom meeting, but everybody has 4 or 5 3D type cameras in their office or their closet or wherever they're doing the meeting, and so now everybody's a hologram in the meeting. And if somebody comes into the meeting with a prototype of the next product that your company's producing, you can now go out and see that product and maybe even tactile touch it if you're wearing some kind of gloves or something that work with it. So I think that's the future. Think about Princess Leia and the R2-D2 bot in the hologram in real world. That's where I see the Metaverse going. You go for your morning jog and you've got a 10-minute route and you say, give me waypoints every 1 minute, and I want them to be a Pokemon Go character X or whatever, and that character pops into your virtual world in front of you in your real world as you're running and tells you your split time, your pace, and you're running. And if your grandmother wants to run with you, she can see your run if you let her subscribe, or if you've got stalkers, and you're public, they can see behind you. However that works, but what is the data that ties into that? If you're driving and you're using Google Maps, so you obviously you see on that jog, it's something like Google Glass is what you'd be wearing, so you'd see the real world, but it would have the opportunity to drop these things into your world. If you're driving and you've got Google Maps up and it shows you, your off-ramp instead, you'd be looking out your windshield or on your bicycle, and suddenly you'd look up at this street signs and the map would circle one of them in red, and you'd watch it be circled, and it would say, take this exit ramp, and then it would point an arrow to the exit ramp on the real world in front of you, and you'd see it. And who knows, maybe it would even give you some kind of a guide, a little troll, like they had in orbits in the old days, that would come out and run out to the exit ramp and point to it and say, turn here, something, I don't know. But again, that would be something where who's got the map platform that could interact with like a Google Glass environment, and I think it'd be like a Google Map type thing that would tie into that. And then if you pulled some of those things in and said, oh, let's look at that as a meeting, and with the meeting, if you were in a meeting, I think about what are the different, the best smart glasses. If you're going to wear smart glasses to go into this kind of situation, I just Googled what are the best smart glasses, and best smart glasses. Apparently Snap has great glasses. I didn't even know that. And apparently Amazon has some great glasses out there. Well, that's just regular glasses. Snap has some great smart glasses. Lenovo, which is the spin-off of hardware from IBM several years ago, apparently they've got something called Luzik. There's different companies out there, even Microsoft, but I don't see something big and odd like that. And again, I think you go back to when Apple was messing with glasses, or when Google had Google Glass. I see that, maybe it is these Snap things, but I think it's something like those Google glasses where you've got it in front of you, it can get you the video, and it'll develop where they'll have it project on the screen in front of you. And I think it's going to be a Google or an Apple or something like that that's going to put something together like that. And then if you think about, where are you going to share this? And if you go out on a Google Meeting type thing, and again, I went and just Googled out, what are the alternatives to Zoom? Zoom is the one that seems to get the most use in commercial settings that I'm pulled into. And this is obviously the Zoho website, so they're saying theirs is the best. What a surprise. But they also stick out GoToMeeting, and a lot of us used to use that before pre-COVID, but they didn't really keep up, and I've had some struggles with those as of late. Ring Central, I don't know what that is even, but Google Meet. I see so many family meetings, social meetings, even sales calls where they want to do a Google Meet. They've got a free version. I could see Google Meet being the one to pull that in where you would discuss it and make things work. Then assuming for a second that you've got what's the best platform to run that on, so I went out and I put, video platforms, or what are the best alternatives to YouTube, and what are the best alternatives to YouTube in 2021. And right now, Vimeo's music videos and a bunch of them that I've never heard of. So again, I think if you're going to upload this in real time, I don't know a lot of folks that use Facebook Live for a meeting. I think it's used for traffic stops more than everything else put together. So when people want to record what's happening with the cops. So if you're going to be streaming your 3D situation, I think you're going to put it up on YouTube, because they just don't have any competition at this point. But now, if we're all streaming 5 or 6 virtual cameras in a 3D render and uploading it, and if YouTube has the capability to do that, where are we putting that? Again, when YouTube came up, they weren't able, their competitors weren't able to compete because the internet wasn't ready. So you look at, okay, so who's going to benefit? Is it the telecom companies? You look at like AT&T, Verizon, I don't know anything about the international ones, T-Mobile. Everything you read about, like when T-Mobile tried to sell itself to Sprint and AT&T with all of its regulatory issues, they aren't building out the communication internet. They're just trying to get government regulation to maintain monopoly status. So they're not going to build the big pipeline for this. So then I went out and I said, okay, show me the biggest communications ETF. And I went to Vanguard ETF Vox. That's the biggest communications holding. And who do they think is the communication network of the world? And I would assume that if they could buy shares in Elon Musk's SpaceX and get Starlink, they'd have a piece of that in here, but that's privately held, so you can't go there. So interestingly, who do they have? They've got Facebook, right up at the top, you'd think, at 16%. But remember, Google Alphabet has two share classes, voting, non-voting. So their holdings is 22% in Google. So they think apparently it's Google, and then they go down. Verizon and AT&T and Charter and T-Mobile are much further down the line. And this is a communication network data transfer data. So if you see a theme here, and I know that I'm biased because I already made my decision, but I got to it doing this before I thought about it. What is the metaverse, and what are going to be the smart glasses, Google Glass? What are the alternatives to Zoom? It is Google Meet. Are there any alternatives to YouTube? No. Who are the biggest telecom plays? And according to Vanguard, it's Google. And so then I start looking at Google a little bit and say, gee, if you look over the last 5 years, here's where the NASDAQ went. If you look at the S&P, it's not even as well. So over the last 5 years, the NASDAQ's doubled, which is pretty cool. But Google actually went up 315%, so it's booming pretty strongly. So the other thing I look at when I look at a company is, is it trending? Does it have solid earnings? And who's the CEO? And if you watched any of the Senate hearings with Sundar Pichai, I'm sure I chopped his name up, he's the guy, and he's been running this thing for quite a while now. And the founders are still engaged slightly in a tech sort of way, and they have interest and ownership in it. So I think it's a good, solid company, unlike, where you hear and read, for whatever reason, Zuckerberg is, perceived, and some of it is reasonably placed, the Lizard King. So with that, I go back and look at, Facebook has been struggling, and I think the reason Zuckerberg threw out the idea of the metaverse is because he had to do something in his universe. Apple took off their ability to scrape data. So Snap got hit, Facebook got hit. They're all trying to figure out how they can collect all the data off of you when you're on their site. And if you're doing it with an iPhone, they can't do it anymore. So he's going to have to find a different answer. And if you look at some of these other players like a Roblox, a lot of folks are saying, oh, they're the metaverse, because they've got this, I would call it not the metaverse, not the virtual, it's more the virtual reality, the VR. But, they're a $50 billion company already, but they don't have the earnings or the reality to support it. And I think they're an element of it, but I think Google's going to be able to jump in and do that if they want. Maybe I'm overstating that. Feel free in the comments to beat me up on that one or give me a different alternative. And then you look at Google. Google's PE for a super high-tech company is 40, but by the same token, it's a $2 trillion operation. So now you've got a $2 trillion operation that may have a huge ship, but they've proven their ability to turn. They've got Google. They've got the second biggest platform on the internet after Google, which is YouTube. They've got Google Search, which is the biggest search, and again, they've got YouTube Search, which is the second biggest search. They've got Android, the phone platform, and Pixel, the hardware on that platform. They've got Waymo, the self-driving. In so many places, if you talk about Apple, if you talk about Facebook, if you talk about Tesla, Google's right there behind them. So they're kind of a pretty big conglomerate of the tech world, and they seem to be right there. And I noticed that when Cathie Wood was using tech companies as her cash, buying in and out of things that were volatile, she was using Google. So if big players think that Google is an alternative to cash, and if Google is growing, and if Google is the metaverse, then I think Google's got to be my play for the metaverse. So again, today is November 12th, 2021. I do hold Google indirectly already because of QQQ and a couple of other holdings, like in the ARK funds that I do hold and some of those other plays. But I'm going to go out, and again, I only hold 10 direct stocks. Google is now going to be one of those stocks. So I'm going to jump in and grab Google as a held position, not as a call and not as some kind of an option play, but just actual direct ownership of Google. So that's my position on Google. Feel free to let me know down below. I'm not going to go do a bunch of financial analysis because I think the market bakes in the discounted cash flow really well. There's a couple of guys out on the internet, and I should do a better job referencing them. I can do that in the comments if you want to see a discounted cash flow model on Google. I'm just saying, who's going to own the metaverse? What is the metaverse? And how do I invest in the metaverse? That's what this video is about. It's Google. So feel free, give me comments who you think is a better play to get into the metaverse, what I'm wrong about Google, and anything I can do better on this. This is only the second time I've done one of these videos. I'm kind of doing it, documenting for my own journal, my investing, but if it helps, great. And if you want to see me do more, and if I get any better in the future, go ahead, subscribe, and I'd appreciate if you hit like, then I'd at least know if people are liking it or not. And thanks a lot. Have a great day. Be careful out there, especially today with Rivian and whatever they're going to do to the market. Thanks a lot.